Very little or no introduction. I have here with me Aisha Yusuf, a social media influencer and political activist. Aisha, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And also we have the presidential candidate of African Action Congress, omoyere SOWERE. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for bringing me.
Thank you so much. So the first question as we open this conversation is, what do you think about the current trajectory of the country? As it is today, do you think that we are going in the right direction? Let's start with Aisha.
I don't even know where to start from that question because there's no country anymore. As we are today, Nigeria is gone. What we have is a carcass, and life is short and brutish, and everyone, we're all on edge. We are the victimhood that a lot of people refuse to see coming to us. We are all there. And unfortunately, we do not have a president. We have someone who rigged his way into office, an illegitimate president, and who doesn't care. And of course, anyone who is ready to do anything, you know, snatch it, run with it, and all of that to get into office, they don't care about the people. They don't care. There's no empathy. And that's what we're seeing today. And Nigeria has gotten into a place where you're not even sure that you're going to see the next day because you might be a victim, might be taken away even from inside your own house. And that's where Nigeria is right now.
Okay, so as an opening statement, yeah, sure.
Well, you know, you asked about trajectory and if we are going in the right direction. And I say we are not going in any direction. That's the biggest problem. You can only tell about direction if there is, you know, from a geographical point of view, there's any kind of movement. Here you see a lot of motion, there is no movement. And if there's any movement at all, it's a movement that is going backwards. And Nigerians, or Nigeria, is paying heavily for both their decisions and their indecisions. Their decisions in deciding, for those who decided in this trajectory, on this trajectory, and the indecision of those who did nothing. And that's why you cannot say, and I agree with Aisha, that you have a country today. We've never had a nation. I've argued this all the time, that Nigeria was never a nation. It was a transaction from the beginning. And that next step is what we haven't been able to make because we never also have had the kind of leaders that are visionary, that are capable of driving you in the right direction since I have been a Nigerian, which is 1971.
Well, okay, I mean, so it's a very nice way to get into it. Now, let's get deeper into the issues, you know. So, Aisha, there is the notion, you know, that of the rule of law, okay? Now, even though we can always point to challenges, because you did say that the president is illegitimate now. After the Supreme Court has ruled, you know, you still don't accept that in the circumstances you have a sitting president in the eye of the law, even with whatever problems we have with that?
I think to answer your question, you saw the last ruling that happened of the governors and the Supreme Court and how everybody was praising Mr. Tinubu for the fact that he didn't interfere and they were able to retain that tells you everything. And as I'm sitting down here today, I'm quite sort of like taken aback that the Supreme Court didn't see how that made them to look. Because right now what we know, and that's the secret, or the open secret, that the courts are no longer the last resort of the common man. They are now like the plaything of corrupt politicians. And these corrupt politicians, they don't care, and they're saying it, they say it openly. We've seen all of that. We saw the Senator Bukatua, what he said. And so it's not about me accepting it or not accepting it. It's what it's on ground. Rule of law is sacrosanct, and it's supposed to be on everybody. Right now, we've seen the different kind of decisions that have been made by the courts. So the way it goes, the court itself, there's no independence. We have judiciary capture, we have media capture, everything there seems to be, even the legislative capture, it's under sort of like one party, one person doing whatever they want to do with it. And at the end of the day, every Nigerian is suffering. There's something many people say. They say Nigerians don't react. That no matter how much you push Nigeria to the walls, they don't react. They say Nigerians are reacting. The people who are killing, they are reacting. That's their own form of protest. Their own is an illegal form of protest because the legal form of protest, they've clamped down on it. They've stopped people from doing that. And every one of us is suffering because there are some people who no longer see any hope. Because when you go to the courts, and if you see a lot of people that have given up on the nation, they know even when they go to the courts, they won't get anything. So they take the laws into their hands. And the rest of us that are law-abiding are the ones who are being punished by the state. The Nigerian state would rather, you know, have a conversation with you, negotiate with you when you carry arms against the country. But when you are law-abiding, it clamps on you, it kills you, and it just disposes of you the way it wants to.
Interesting. Okay, so let me take it to SOWERE. basically both of you have the same view. Not that I'm surprised, but it makes it quite exciting. So what is the way out? Is there a legitimate path, out of this trajectory? I'm going to start with Shawari and then we'll come to Aisha.
I think any way that saves people from the doom and destruction that has become their lot is legitimate. And I say this so that people are very clear about where I stand on Nigerian issues. Earlier, I agree with Aisha that there is no country. Where I disagree or differ from them and their party was their own brazen hope, I call it brazen, that the judiciary was somehow going to deliver differently in the 2023 election, because it has been very clear from the election, from the primaries at the party level, the conduct of INEC, that they were not planning an election. So when the elections were over, and there was this eye on the judiciary, I was wondering which eye, which judiciary are you eyeing? Because I understand the judiciary right from my university days. I have been expelled, went to court, judges did not deliver justice. So, but where I agree with her is the issue of legitimacy. See, something can be legal and be legitimate. A human being can be born as a legal human being, but the process of birth might be legitimate if it doesn't go through what is legit. So I agree with her that and you have a right to reject a system or a precedent that did not come legitimately, as it's been decided by, or ought to have been decided by the rule of law. But we're not dealing with a country that respects any laws. The laws here are like cobwebs. They are only meant for ants. And, the elephants walk past them without even knowing them. So it's a country that is created for two categories of citizens. And that is why I have always advocated, and I'm never afraid to say that something massive, something urgent, and something revolutionary must happen in Nigeria for us to change course. This course will continue, They have already rigged even the next election if we go by how they have populated INEC already. In the US, where you and I spent some years, if one person was going to the Supreme Court, the country was shut down. There will be conversations. They'll go and look at where he was standing when he was in primary one. If he was backing the flag or he was in front of it, if he plucked somebody's coconut, if he took somebody's eraser. Here in this country, there were over 11 Supreme Court judges that were just smuggled into the Supreme Court, and nobody talked about it. In fact, the media did not talk about it. The public are not aware. Nobody knows who these new judges are. Nobody did any background checks on them. So in 4 years, we're going to have election. The person who anointed those Supreme Court judges, 11 of them, as we speak, controls what you would call justice. And this is not going to change except the citizens said, no, enough is enough. We are not taking this any longer. And that is why I advocate for a revolution. Not a violent one, because I don't believe in violence. But it is up to those who are hurting to decide how they want to fight this.
Okay, interesting point. So as I bring it back to Aisha, you supported the Labour Party presidential candidate, which suggests to me that you probably have the belief that we can change it through getting some people in government. Is that your own approach to try to fix the trajectory that you think is not right?
Yeah, so for me, absolutely. Political activism is very important. Staying out of politics and saying that, by the way, I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I say a lot of people make that assumption. I'm a supporter because I believe in candidacy more than I do of party. If you have people that can do the work. As much as activism and politics, the end result is supposed to be for the greater good of the people, where those who are on the side of advocating, like, this is the problem, then those who are in the political side who get into office, who get elected, fix the problem. So it's that, demand and supply side of governance that Dr. Obi Ezekwesili would always talk about. And so for me, it's very important for people to begin to participate. We have to participate in that politics, as flawed as it is. Yes, I totally agree that the capture of judiciary didn't start today. I mean, we saw in 2015 when the Supreme Court said that the card reader was not admissible in the law. And that sort of like changed the course of all the, the electoral reform that was done at that time. So we've seen a lot of things that have gone on. But we must still continue to take on the system. One of the things that we don't take into cognizance is the fact that the first set of dictators that many Nigerians, or if not all Nigerians made, were actually from the home, were parents. We're brought up in a society where, as a younger person, you can't speak up. You don't speak up to your parents. You don't challenge them. You don't ask them, why did they do this? You'll be called disrespectful. You'll be called a stubborn child. For those of us that did as kids, we got a lot of beating. So, and then people went on. Teachers also continued the suppression, and people became adults, and they simply replaced their parents' teachers with government. So some people feel that, oh, you can't challenge government, you can't do that. So it's going to take a long time. It's a mindset thing that will happen. But the thing is that it's inevitable. Like SOWERE said, of course, the bloody revolution is always the best. A bloody revolution doesn't take anyone anywhere. You either have and it's inevitable. We either have a bloodless revolution or a bloody revolution. The 2023 election was actually a bloodless revolution where people who hitherto had never bothered about politics, were never interested. They didn't think it was, they didn't see the relationship between governance and their lives, decided that they were going to be part of that political process. And they were part of it. And at the end of the day, the process was not allowed to go through. The end result is not what matters. It's the process that matters. If the process was free, fair, credible, and it was transparent, and the result still turned out to be the way it is, everybody will move on. It's every 4 years. You have another 4 years to come through it. But where people see how their will was subverted, because when you have a political coup, a civilian coup like what we had in with the 2020 election, it's the same thing like a military coup. So the world needs to also see that. So but on the issue of the political, it's very important. If we say today we have a revolution, I always ask this question, we have a revolution today. Who are we going to put in these offices? We need to begin to create leaders. We don't have leaders. We have a vacuum because people have stayed away from politics, looking at it as it's dirty. Let's not do it. So we just have people get money or one thing or the other. The next thing they run for office, they get in there without any preparation, without even knowing anything. You see someone, they say, oh, come and run for be president. I'm like, you don't just become president like that. You have to. There's certain things, there's certain competence skills that you're supposed to acquire, leadership skill, empathy, your EQ, IQ, and all of that along the way. So we must begin to engage in that process of that politics and say, okay, let's get into it one way or the other. Yes, it looks difficult. If we don't have the revolution, and revolution, nobody can call for revolution. That's one thing. It has to happen on its own. I always say to people, when that revolution will happen, we'll all see ourselves on the streets and we'll be saying, even you bros, you might be here. Sis, you might join us. That's the way to go. But until we get to that stage, can we begin to prepare sort of like that leadership so that we have a sort of a critical mass of people that we get into leadership position and actually serve the people, not the ones that we get in there and then they'll begin to do what we're saying today. Because most of the people who are in leadership today were actually the ones who were fighting for this democracy. We're the ones who were fighting for human rights, but they got in there, they became, from baby monsters, they became gigantic monsters.
Okay, good. Let's go back to SOWERE on the same point. So SOWERE, you've been the presidential candidate of a political party. That means you also succumb to the idea that partisan politics can help fix the. So in that wise, how do you intend, as a politician, how do you intend to use your party to change this?
So I wanted to make it clear that when revolutions happen, people make them happen. And you call for it. Every country that's had a revolution, there were people who were working towards it. That's what is in history. It is what triggers it that I may not have a date, she may not know the date. It's very interesting that after the 2023 election, most of the people who said revolution was a bad idea were calling for revolution. They are still calling for it. Some of them were calling for a coup plot. Yes, because of the election. I also want to correct the impression that, 2023, in my view, actually didn't have, it had enthusiasm but low participation. In the history of the country, number of voters in 2023 were probably some of the lowest. If you look at the number of registered voters compared to the number of people that went out to vote.
Maybe there were more new voters.
Yes. So, because people have started losing faith in the political process before now. You're talking about 2015. In 2007, and you and I were covering this from the U.S., the Supreme Court decided, first it was the Court of Appeal, that you don't need, what do they call it, serial numbers for the ballot papers. And as a result, Yar'Adua became president and he had to apologize himself, being what they call a good Muslim, that I know I didn't win the election, but let's move on. So this process did not start today. But what has been happening is that those who are manipulating the process have been growing in impunity. And I want to address the issue of where the leaders come from. We cannot claim that people are not, we are not producing leaders. what has not happened is that some of the best leaders in this country have not been given the opportunity or have not created the opportunity to lead. You know, you cannot claim that after my 30 years of being an activist, from the university to creating media to doing some of the things that are impossible, even living abroad, I consider that, you know, education and leadership development. You can't claim that Aisha here, who led a major movement to bring back our girls, is not ready for leadership. No. See, when the revolution happens, when the vacuum is created for good people, you'll be surprised at how many leaders we have who have just been suppressed in their various fields, who are depressed, who are compressed. They will be unleashed on society. Some of them will come from abroad. When I was doing the election campaigns in 2018, I met Nigerians who are tunnel engineers in the UK. They are the ones building the tunnels that the trains drive. You have a Nigerian doctor who brought out a baby for the first time in history, fixed the baby and put it back. How can we say that the country don't have these leaders? But as long as you keep putting, or these guys keep imposing themselves on the system, those potentials will never rise to the surface. And the last part I would address over this issue of leadership is that even the struggle to bring about a better society creates its own leaders. But we must not forget that the number of people that fought for democracy compared to the number of people who have transited from that era to the new dictatorial era she's talking about, but there are very few, very few, you know, and you can argue, and I've argued this before, if some of these guys who are now in power actually fought for democracy, if they weren't fighting for themselves, considering that the period of the democratic struggle, the most difficult part of it, some of them were selling drugs abroad. So how can you be fighting for democracy and engaging in crime? So this is what we have found out. So if you do the maths very well, you discover that the real democratic leaders have not transited. And this is a conversation probably for another day. And that is why some of us went and created parties of our own. Because Chief Gani Fawemi created one in 1994 when it was not even acceptable to create a party. Part of the reason I participate in the political process is also to throw off the contradictions in the system, so that the more of those of us who are outliers participating, the more the system's underbelly is exposed to the public. But if you leave it for them, which is what we did in 1999, by the way, we fought for democracy when it was time to transit. We all left. I left Nigeria in 1999. By the time I came back, they had bloodied Gani Fawemi. Falana tried to be governor of Ekiti. He lost in a way that nobody has ever lost. They ridiculed everybody. Real pro-democracy activists were ridiculed. But the fake pro-democracy activists got into power. Yes, from 1999. So we should not consider those ones as the real face of the pro-democracy movement, because most of them weren't fighting for democracy.
Anyway, you know, I mean, it's,
let me just take you off from what he's talked about in the 1999, which is, I totally agree with him. The people who really fought for democracy, they didn't participate in it. And that comes to the question where you're talking about political process. There are a lot of people who just feel that, people shouldn't participate in the political process, and that's wrong, because what happened in 1999 was that those who actually fought for it thought maybe the military were not going to go away or something, they left, and criminals entered. And by the time those criminals, a good number of them weren't even whether fake, they were criminals, because nature abhors vacuum, and then they got in. By the time the people who were actually pro-democracy came back, they couldn't get them out of it. So that's one. The other thing I just want to quickly talk about is on the issue of the register. When we look at the percentage, the 2023 election, we had very small percentage, but we could see there were quite a number of people that came out. One of the things for me, and I think, and I might be wrong, and I want to be proven whether right or wrong, is the fact that with the 2023 election, incidence form was not allowed. So people, there had to be that accreditation. If you're not taking it, then you can't vote. Right. Unlike what we had before, where this, even with the card reader, incidence form, politicians will have a way to just bring up these numbers. Another thing also we have to look at is that register itself. Is it really the number of people that are there? Because what we had earlier on before, politicians used to, register multiple. One person will have like 40-something cards, 100 cards, because they use it to how do I put it, to just inflate their numbers. But now it's not, and then we are having an issue. And that issue also comes to us in the fact that when we want to recall lawmakers, the law says you must 50%. Meanwhile, it's not 50% that send the person to either the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly. So there are a lot of things that we need to fix. And unfortunately for us, the one legislative arm of government government that is the bedrock of democracy in Nigeria, that is supposed to be more powerful than the executive, has actually found itself to be less powerful because the executive have money and they use it to just tie them, or there's a capture of it all. So we need to have all of these systemic changes going on. While we're waiting for that revolution to happen, let's also have a political revolution like he has done by running for office. Let's continue to have that and get more people in there. Somehow we get it work.
Excellent. So in my view, I think that reforms of these different institutions, could be useful. We could talk about judicial reforms, talk about political reforms, but let's talk about judicial reforms. And this is not a subject, of course, that is only left for legal luminaries. The people have a stake. What kind of judicial reforms would you think is ideal? For instance, there have been an argument that look, the people that end up in the Supreme Court, for instance, ought not just to be people who are judges. What about law professors or distinguished lawyers? What are your ideas around judicial reforms in such a way that can give us the Nigeria that we expect? Let's start with Ashiwa.
I've said it and I will keep saying it. Nigeria has passed the stage of reforms.
You don't think that any reform is useful?
I don't think that the current set of people in Nigeria can reform the judiciary. Let me give you an example. In the last 3 years, I've been stuck in Abuja, and there were 62 vacancies in the various courts in Abuja. Out of the 62, I think 60 of the new judges were children of former judges or their relatives.
Are you talking about the federal court or the
federal court? I'm talking about the FCT court, and the magistrates. So they have cornered these places. It's not going to happen that the place can be reformed by the people who are benefiting from it. That's why there has to be an eruption. There has to be a whole eruption of the
problem with eruption is the disorderliness of it. And, and to the extent
we are already in a state of disorder. This is chaos. This is anarchy. Anarchy is defined as a state of lawlessness. If you are delivering judicial pronouncements in which you give a public pronouncement, and by the time the people who are victims of your pronouncement came to collect the CTC, they discovered there's a difference between what you pronounce, as they did in Kano, and what is the CTC. That is anarchy. We are already there.
Yeah, but I'm saying are you saying that those things cannot be fixed? We can identify the problem.
Who's going to fix it?
The people, by the people coming out, organizing themselves, making demands for specific reforms.
You can't make demands to people who are deaf. These guys are tone deaf, and they believe in their own impunity. They have the police, the army, who are ready to kill you if you make these demands. If you make peaceful demands, they'll kill you. Like she said, the only people who can make serious demands on the Nigerian government are people who are armed to the teeth themselves, who are involved in the same level of impunity and violence as the Nigerian state. Those are the only people they listen to. So, and those people don't make this kind of demands. They don't go to the judiciary. If they kidnap someone, they're asking for ransom. It's not a judge that's going to deliver the ransom. If they have enough ransom and you put them in front of a judge, the judge will let them go because the judge will collect part of the ransom. I will tell you something that's happening now. All the people they said they found with money in the last regime, they are pleading with them to drop some of it. The reason is that they say if we take them to the judges will collect the money. I won't get a dime. That's what I heard is happening with the regime. So if I was gotten to that level, where thieves are so powerful that even prosecutors are afraid to take them before judges, the country is already in a state of anarchy. So the disorderliness you are talking about is here with you. If kidnappers can kidnap freely, daytime, nighttime, that is anarchy. I think the order in Afghanistan is better than the order in Nigeria as we speak today. Even though all of us were afraid 2 years ago that Afghanistan is going back to Taliban and they'll kill everybody there. I've not heard of serious violence. I'm not advocating that we should have a Taliban here or government of any. But I'm telling you that this is total chaos. The chaos that can only be envisaged if there is no governance, if there is no order.
Okay. So where we start from is that you don't fix something that is not broken. So when you're talking about reform means that, there's something that is not working and you need to fix it. Yeah. The people who are supposed to fix it, it's working for them. So the state that we have right now, that's what SOWERE is also talking about. It's working for them. They're enjoying it. So there's no reform that they will be looking at to make in terms of judicial reform or any of that, the set of people. And that's why we need to have the kind of people that will focus more on the nation rather than on their own selfish interests. And what part of the thing he also said, how do we even get these judges to be judges, the magistrate and all of that? How do they get in there? What's the process that they seem to get? And the CJN also, like the office of the CJN, there's too much power in that whole office. And the only way we can get that, the legislative arm, of course, that will be able to help us to do that, they can't. They won't do it because it favors them. They'll be able to use one thing or the other.
What about if the
to
people
get
insist and put pressure on the legislature to do the right thing?
So the people, so that's also like what he said. The people insisting, how do they insist? They insist by coming out and voicing. They insist by protesting. They insist by, but you know what? The Nigerian government always behaves like a terrorist government. When people come out on armed citizens, they kill them. We saw what happened October 2020. Young people were singing the national anthem. They held the flag of Nigeria. And yet, the Nigerian state went there with military and killed them. Not only killed them, still gaslighting that it never happened. So how are people supposed to come out when they're being killed when they come out? And then the only people that the government is ready to listen to are the people who take up arms against the state. For law-abiding citizens, every day, you see the way they dehumanize you, the way they come out, they kill you. They're doing election, they're bringing out election results. They brought out military tankers all over the ICC building. All over. But where are those military tankers when kidnappers are taking our children and killing them because the people didn't pay ransom? They are nowhere to be found. The Nigerians, the security agencies in Nigeria, their allegiance is always to the president, even if it's an illegitimate one, and the ruling party, rather than to the people of Nigeria and the constitution. So that's a major problem that we have. People want to protest. They come out to protest. They are being killed. So there's nothing out of it. And this state that we are in now, and if we do nothing, it's going to worsen. We have religion keeping people down. They will use tradition. They will use all sorts of things to tell you not to speak out. But people are being killed. And then people are being told that, inshallah, it won't be them. In Jesus' name, it won't be their portion. I wonder the people who are being killed, whose portion it is. If we do nothing, every one of us, we are all victims waiting to happen. Yesterday's victims were once survivors. Today's victims were yesterday's survivors. And tomorrow's victims will be today's survivors. The people that have been killed will not be killed again. The next to be killed are those of us that are alive. And Nigerians need to understand this thing is not, we're not going to wish it away. We don't have the patent to prayers. We're not going to pray it away because God will not do for us what he has given us the capacity for us to do for ourselves. Fixing Nigeria, God has given us that capacity. So if we like and do nothing and we stay in our houses and we keep praying, then this whole thing will continue and it's not going to end. We're already on the path of chaos. So it's left for the people to decide. Are they going to stand up against the people who have held this country ransom? Because there are few of them. And if we come out in our numbers, of course, we'll get that country that we want. But a lot of people are afraid. But something we give that will break that fear, and nobody will call for it, like I said earlier. The people will find themselves on the street.
Beyond the protest, which is important, there are times when we, but in terms of, working within the limits of the law, since we are not going to break the law, we're not going to ask people to break the law, both of you have considered that. What else can we do in getting the critical mass of our people to be educated between now and the next election, to be empowered? So I mean, I take all the points about, they are not going to change it. People moved, people got involved in 2023. But apparently, there seems to be a little bit more space of what can be done in trying to engage the people on a long-term basis.
Self-love.
That's what I'm
saying. I want to say this, and I think it's important to make a philosophical statement around the law. If the law keeps breaking the people might need to break the law so that they can break free. Apartheid was legal in South Africa, but it was breaking South Africans until they broke it. Slavery was legal. In fact, not only was it legal, slavery is also ecclesiastical. It's in the Bible that you should respect your master. But when slavery was breaking people had to break the law of slavery. So if the Nigerian law keeps breaking the Nigerian people may need to break the part of the law that keeps them broken all the time. And that is why I keep advocating mobilization that do not come only during elections. In other serious countries, if elections are rigged, the person who rigged the election cannot walk away. You get my point. Yeah. And I had the issue with the Labour Party and where Aisha was with. They mobilized they also were demobilizing when they should keep mobilizing. I don't see any reason why they sat back after it was known that there was, I said, I know there was no election. But whatever they believed took place. And they ought not to have stopped there. They ought to have been complete mobilization and the shutdown of the system. The system was ready for that shutdown. But then they said, hey, don't fight, don't fight. They're not going to get power on a platter of gold. Don't let anybody deceive you that somehow, because those who are in power.
The president said that himself, that power will never serve
Yes, those who are in power will keep giving you homework assignments and, homework to do. Go and mobilize, go and mobilize. We're talking about political parties. Very soon, they will come and register political parties so that they can register political parties that will do their bidding. Or the political parties they cannot register, they will go in there and scatter the party. Because what they want is a one-party state. It's a dictatorial one-party state.
Do you think a one-party state can survive in Nigeria? I don't think so.
Well, all the parties that are in Nigeria that are in power, that have been in power, they are all one. It's just different uniforms.
different addresses.
Yes, it's just different national headquarters.
Because
Nigeria is the only country in the world where you can sleep as a PDP member and wake up as APC.